All right, welcome back to another installment of the Wide Right Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic, joined today by Andrew Farelli of Team Raw, the 7-on-7 team here in South Florida. Brand new team launching this coming season. Farelli was part of the South Florida Express for many years, knows many of the guys that we're going to be talking about, is one of our recruiting insiders on the show, very knowledgeable. And obviously, it's an important time as we record this around 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, December 14th. A week from now, Andrew, everybody's going to be signing on the dotted line. And Miami's coaching staff is trying to finish strong here. Last night, they pick up Ruben Bain, the four-star defensive lineman out of Miami Central. I actually went to the filming of the Nat Moore Trophy that was being awarded to one of those four players that were on stage. Brandon Inniss from American Heritage, Nathaniel Joseph, a Miami commitment from Miami Edison, and a kid from Chaminade whose name is escaping me right now.
Edwin Joseph.
Edwin Joseph. Yes, sorry. It's too many names to remember, Andrew. I got Samson Okunlola on the mind.
There's a lot of
There's
names flying all around right now.
so those were the four finalists. It's going to be announced later tonight on television. Yes, it'll be taped, but anyway, the four of them were there. All of them kids that Miami showed a lot of interest in, and really, I would say Ruben Bain was probably the one that was most important to Mario Cristobal, especially in light of the fact that his brother's on staff at Miami, his former high school coach is on staff at Miami, and his former teammate Wesley Bissainthe, who won 3 state championships with him at Miami Central, is Miami's starting linebacker. So very important victory for Miami last night, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a kid they've wanted badly for a long time. They felt good about him for a long time. I mean, back in the summer, it seemed like he may as well have just lived on campus at UM. He was there every day for practices. It was like a week straight where he was just there every day. Like you said, they've got his brother on staff, former high school coach on staff. They really did everything they could to make that one happen. And it definitely paid off. And they're excited to get him on board. His production is undeniable. He's a kid that had 29 sacks last year and almost 50 tackles for loss, and he's approaching those numbers again his senior year with the state championship coming up this weekend. So definitely a big time player in the trenches that they wanted, and I'm sure they're ecstatic to have him on board now.
Yeah, he's really I think about 6'3", 250 pounds, and Charles Fishbein of Elite Scouting Services, who I've had on the show before, and Charles is a guy that does a lot of scouting throughout the state. He and I talked about this. If Ruben Bain is an inch or two taller, he's probably a top 5 recruit in the country, right? Just because of the production and the skill level that he has. So he's a little short. So what? So was Aaron Donald, and look at the player he became, right?
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that. If he's someone that's 6'5", 6'6", just that prototype model, he's easily a 5-star, top 5, top 10 kid. He's not. He's, like you said, 6'2", 6'3", but he's got a very strong lower half. He's very, very precise with his hands, the way he works, and his production. I mean, you can't deny the numbers that he's put up multiple years in a row at, playing in a big time Dade County high school football.
Yeah, I think over 55 or 56 career sacks for him. He's got, I think, 28 this season. He told us last night. And by the way, I have an interview with him. I want to post on the audio version of the show. I know those of you tuning into YouTube are watching this and saying, we're not going to hear this at the end of this podcast." But if you download the audio version, which is available wherever you download your podcasts, you'll be able to listen to Ruben's interview as well as Nathaniel Joseph, the wide receiver who has been committed to Miami. He's been a big time recruiter for them. And I didn't know this, but they actually grew up together, Ruben and Nathaniel Joseph, since they were about 5 years old, playing football against one another. Did you know that Nathaniel Joseph was actually an offensive lineman at one point?
Yes, I did because we would make fun of him for that in 7-on-7. If any ever dropped the pass, anything like that, it would just go back to because he was an offensive lineman.
Such an incredible athlete that he makes you forget that where his roots came from. Just an incredible athlete, incredible person as well. Really smart, sharp kid. And I got a chance to talk to Ray Ray when I was with the South Florida Express and you guys out in California and Vegas. And those two kids, you really think about the foundation of Miami's class in the city, right? Being able to get city guys. I looked it up last night. I think there's 18 blue chip recruits in South Florida between Dade and Broward in this cycle. Getting Bain and Nathaniel Joseph, those are two of the five that you got, and I would say two of the more important ones because they come from the inner city and they're really smart, good football players. We saw what really smart, good football players from the inner city can do with Cam Kitchens this year. He was named All-Americaner this week. But from a foundational piece, what it means to win in the city, Andrew.
Definitely. I mean, that's a huge part of it. And those kids like to stick together. I mean, we've seen it with Ray Ray. Obviously on social media, recruiting these other guys, but also behind the scenes, he has been a workhorse for this staff, just constantly in other guys' ears and trying to get them to get on board, and just trying to really get all these South Florida kids to stick together. And I think, that's obviously been the model for for a long time, is to put that fence around Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. And it really starts with getting some of those inner city Miami kids to build that foundation and keep those kids home. And I think that's going to continue, hopefully into the 2024 class. And that's really the model they're trying to build going forward, is keeping those top kids home and then being able to go around the country and kind of handpick elite recruits nationally to fill different needs at different positions.
Last week I told you I was going to get up to Tallahassee for the state championship game to go watch Edwin Joseph and Chaminade win. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go up there, but I did make it to Bradenton IMG Academy. I sat down with Miami's two of Miami's four commitments there. Francis Mawingoa, that's the way he wants it pronounced, by the way, like Tua Tagovailoa. He wants it sort of the same way. But Francis Mawingoa, the five-star offensive tackle. I got to sit down with Antonio Tripp, who is going to come in here and be one of the interior offensive linemen. Played left guard right next to Francis for the final 7 games of IMG season. So they have a little bit of chemistry built there. Interesting guys. Those are some more interviews that at some point I want to share here on the podcast. I'm writing about them this week. But I think this class, from my conversations with those guys, I think the one thing that stands out about this class is Miami's season was terrible. They were 5-7 and they lost 5 straight home games. It was tough to stomach and be there and have to watch that. But I think at the same time, and you'll hear it in our interview with Ray Ray, they all looked at this as an opportunity to come in and play right away, right? Like that's really what this group sort of did. And they had their group chat. And my understanding from talking to Francis and Antonio is the one guy who really wasn't a part of that group chat and participated a lot was Jaden Rashada. So they weren't surprised that he dropped out of the class, but the rest of them were all very engaged and they all just kept telling each other, we're going to be the difference. We're going to come in and change Miami.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this class has been very tight from the start. Like you said, they all have that group chat. They were taking visits in here, for a lot of those home games where Miami was not just losing, but losing by large amounts, and they were completely undeterred. They knew they wanted to be the ones to come in and make a difference, come in and start right away, especially a kid like Francis. I don't think enough can be said about him, of how good of a prospect he is. I think he's a kid that will walk on campus day one and be Miami's starting tackle for the next 3 years before heading off to the NFL. And just getting kids like that can walk in and change the program, not only from day one, but just over the next 2, 3, 4 years. That's what this coaching staff was really selling this class on. And regardless of what happened on the field this year, this class believed that they could be the ones to come in and make a difference, and they're excited to come in and be able to play right away, be able to come in and be the ones that kind of change the standard here at UM going forward.
Yeah, and I think that Mario's very fortunate. And I would say the key to it all, and I wrote this in my story that'll be coming out in the Athletic, is Mario's magic fingers. He texts more than any head coach in the country. I spoke to Lakeland's recruiting coordinator Marvin Frazier last week on my drive back from IMG Academy on Friday, just to ask him some questions about Cormani and Cormani McLean, Miami's 5-star cornerback commitment. Mario was making an in-home visit that day, and one thing he told me was Mario texts these players more than any head coach in college football. Just his commitment, and that's something Francis talked about with me as well. That there were times he wouldn't answer head coaches or assistant coaches he just would put the phone down, and he wanted to sort of see who really was still thinking about him, because it's one of those things, right? You start texting somebody, they don't answer, you're just gonna be like, oh, forget it, they're ignoring me. Well, Mario wouldn't stop. Mario would keep texting him over and over again, just saying, hey, I'm thinking about you, giving him inspirational thoughts. Last night, Ruben Bain talked about the same thing, that Mario's commitment to keep reaching out and reaching out and reaching out, it showed these kids they were really wanted. And I guess my question to you, Andrew, just saying all that stuff, these kids well. If Mario isn't here and he isn't doing that, I know everybody's going to say NIL, NIL money is important. The kids would have come anyway. I don't necessarily believe that.
No, I don't believe that at all. If Mario wasn't here, I mean, obviously having, the NIL backing and everything like that helps, but there's a lot of schools that have NIL backing and aren't putting up the recruiting performance that Mario is right now. His dedication in recruiting, just like you said, how constantly he's reaching out to them. I don't know when he sleeps because it'll be 4:30. He'll be getting up to work out, go to the gym, go to the facility, whatever. He's texting these kids 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, texting these players. And that's just something that really resonates with them. Even Miami's recent commit that flipped from Michigan, Collins Achiapong, he was talking last night on his Instagram live about how one of the reasons that he made that flip to Miami was because he had a knee surgery this year, and he said Miami staff was just constantly in connection with him before the surgery, wishing him good luck. After the surgery, asking how it went, constantly checking in on him. He said the Michigan staff really wasn't doing that at all. Even before and after his surgery, that he wasn't hearing from them too often regarding that. And he was the highest rated player in that Michigan class. And they still weren't reaching out to him nearly as much as Miami was doing. And I think that's another example of just how that constant communication that Mario and the staff has with these players is really helping to get them on board and build that trust that a lot of these recruitments come down to.
Yeah, and I will say this: it's not just Mario, although he'll get the bulk of the credit because he's the head coach. But certainly Dennis Smith, behind the scenes in the recruiting department. So many others that are unnamed, right? That do such a big job. Roland Smith, who's on staff, part of the high school relations. When those guys come and visit, all the assistant coaches. There's a lot of people behind the scenes, but the whole point is, yes, NIL helped Miami put this class together. But I think Mario's persistence kept it together and made these guys feel like they were really wanted. And in the end, Ruben Bain could have gone pretty much anywhere he wanted. And yes, he had a lot of reasons to stay home. But in the end, I think it's because of Mario's persistence and kept telling him over and over again, we really need you. We really want you. That helps. And I'm not naive, Andrew. I'm not naive to be living in this world where it's just the coach. It's not what I'm saying to our listeners. What I'm saying is, if you didn't have that extra element, I'm not so sure Miami wins those battles. So that's it. I want to talk to you about another battle Miami's in now. Samson Okunlola, the 5-star from Braintree, Massachusetts, their academy. He's obviously one of the bigger targets here down the stretch for Miami. Um, Thought process on that. I know Gabby Urrutia from 247 Sports has put in his crystal ball, and anytime Gabby, who covers Miami recruiting full time, says something like that, you listen, right? I don't think he's very wrong very often.
Definitely.
Does it seem to you like this is going to happen here when he makes his announcement Thursday?
I think they're feeling pretty good at this moment. Obviously, as a kid, it seemed like Miami was largely in the lead for a majority of this recruitment the last maybe month or so. Things seem to have swung a little bit of Florida's way. He took an official visit there recently and everything like that. But it does sound like over the last maybe 3 to 5 days, Miami has definitely kind of put themselves back in the lead there. Everything I'm hearing, both on the Miami side and from talking to some of the people I know on the UF side as well. It seems like Miami feels pretty good there, and the tone from some of the people working on UF side has definitely changed over the last couple of days. It doesn't seem like they feel very confident up there in Gainesville. Miami's doing a lot of work with him from, they're putting together a lot of plans for it once he gets down here, just from a branding perspective, helping him build that Pancake Concho brand. And it's definitely something that you can sell being in Miami on versus being in a city like Gainesville. If you're trying to build a brand, you're trying to sell a product, trying to put stuff together, get your name out there, are you going to be able to do that better in a city with millions of people like Miami or in Gainesville, Florida with 40,000 college students? So I think that's one of the things that they're trying to sell these kids that are really focused on building their brands and building that NIL value is you can come down here and do it in a big city where you'll have lots of opportunities, lots of people, or you can go to a Gainesville or a Tuscaloosa, and what are you going to do there? And I think that's something that's kind of resonated with him is just if he's really serious about building out that brand. And I feel like he sees that the best opportunity to do that is down here in Miami. And that's something I feel like they've sold him on pretty well recently. And hopefully that'll be the difference when he commits tomorrow.
The one thing I'm interested in as far as Samson is concerned is what is the view for him long term? What is it that you're hearing he wants? Does he literally want to have his own pancake company, or what's the plan? What's sort of the whole concept behind this with the pancakes?
Yeah, he's fully on board with going on having his own Pancake Honcho clothing line, his own Pancake Honcho pancake brand. Anything and everything you can imagine when it comes to that. He wants to push it out there, get it out there, and build that brand in many different ways. He's very focused on that. So that's something that they, like I said, they've helped show him like, hey, if that's what you're most serious about outside of football, coming down here to Miami is going to give you the best opportunity to do that.
Mhm. All right. Well, we'll see how this thing goes on Thursday when he makes his announcement. Miami's also in on obviously some transfers. They've got some more high school kids that they're after. Last night I ran into American Heritage's coach Mike Smith, their head coach, and they've got a state championship game to play Friday against Miami Central here in Fort Lauderdale. But they also have national signing day around the corner. They've got some big targets for Miami. One of them being Mark Fletcher, the running back who just visited Florida last week. Everybody seems to think Florida's the leader for him. I know he's mentioned that he could potentially take a visit to Miami this weekend. They've also got Damari Brown, the four-star cornerback, as well as his older brother, Devontae, who former UCF transfer, who I think Miami's trying to work on to get them to maybe come together. But I think the feeling is Miami's trailing in both of those races, both for Damari because Alabama's sort of emerging as the top team now after they couldn't get Cormani McLean to flip. And then, with Fletcher, I think he likes, you mentioned this last week on the show, Andrew, that he really likes the college atmosphere at Florida, that, the small town feel, etc. What's sort of the latest that you're hearing on in regards to those guys?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same stuff with both of them still. Fletcher, I think the biggest thing is going to be seeing if he does make it to campus this weekend. As of right now, he still has that official visit to Miami planned for this upcoming weekend. I think if he takes that visit, Miami probably feels pretty good having the last visit before signing day. But I know UF is working very hard to try to get him to cancel that. And he did tell some people up while he was at UF that that was kind of the school that was in the lead for him at the time. So I think Florida's definitely got a slight advantage there right now on Fletcher, but I think if he does make it down to campus for that official visit this weekend, that could change a lot of things. So that's kind of the main thing I'm looking at over these next few days in his recruitment is if he does end up taking that official visit to Miami, or if UF is able to go ahead and get him to cancel that. Um, as for Damari, Bama kind of came in and does what Bama does sometimes. They tried to do that with Cormani, and Miami was able to luckily shut that down. And that led them to kind of pivot to Damari. I'd say right now Miami's probably trailing Alabama in that one, but if he does show up to campus with Mark, he already took his official visit to Miami, but I know if Mark does come for that official, they're trying to get Damari to show up as just a visitor with Devontae, his brother, and see if they can make some moves there. So I think the biggest thing is if they can get both of those guys on campus this last weekend to try to get some of that momentum back. But as of right now, I would say they're trailing in both of those recruitments with Fletcher to UF and Damari to Alabama.
Miami did lose a commitment who was part of the class, Connor Liu, a kid out of Georgia, Ackworth, Georgia, who flipped to Auburn after he took a visit there last weekend. So right now, really, they're down. With Bain. I think they're now at what, 23 commitments? Am I right?
Yes.
23. Um, but if they're able to get Okunlola, it sort of seems like between that and whatever they do here in the transfer portal, that they'll have solidified probably what they want on the offensive line. Let's just go, kind of group by group here. What are you hearing as far as the offensive line? I know the former starting left guard at Alabama is supposed to be taking a visit here, Javian Cohen. Is he maybe him and Sampson maybe the finishing touches on the offensive line from what you're hearing?
Yeah, definitely. I think those are the two that they want most to go ahead and close out this offense line class. I would be surprised if they took another one or two in the portal just as depth guys. But I feel like if they close with Sampson and with Cohen, they'll feel very good, and I think they've got a good shot to do that. Cohen, they've been speaking with him nonstop. The staff's been in constant contact with him, and he is coming down this last weekend before there goes into a dead period for the transfer portal, where they're not allowed to meet or anything like that. So I think getting him down here before that dead period goes into effect is big. He didn't take any official visits anywhere else. This is the only one he's taken, is to come down here to Miami. And I think they're in very good spot there to land him. And I think he's someone that walks in and starts right away. I mean, he started on Alabama's offensive line the last 2 years, so obviously he's going to be able to walk in and start here pretty early. So I think if they close with Cohen, Sampson, and then Francis, as well as some of the other guys in this class, they're going to be very, very happy with the way that that offensive line class is shaping up going forward.
Let's stay on the offensive side for now. Wide receiver, they've obviously had some flirtations with a few different guys. I saw last night Seven McGee, the kid who was formerly at Oregon, is kind of a running back slash wide receiver. I think he's going to end up going to Jackson State. The other kid that they were after from Texas A&M Commerce, I think committed to Arkansas. What's the latest with the receiver position as far as getting that outside threat?
I think they're definitely looking in the portal for that. Obviously, the guys they have committed in this class, the Ray Josephs, the Robbie Washingtons, guys that are electric with the ball in their hands, but they still need that big body, deep ball threat, and that's someone that they're definitely looking in the portal for. I know there's the kid from Texas A&M Commerce, Andrew, that they're going after, but we'll see what happens there. There's some names that haven't hit the portal yet that I think they're hoping to hit the portal this week. But that's definitely a position where they're going to be working on for the next couple of weeks, maybe the next couple of months as we get into that next portal opening after spring to continue to look for a receiver there.
Yeah. On the defensive side, they hosted Francisco Mauigoa. Francis's older brother, who was from Washington State, had third leading tackler at Washington State last year with 60 tackles, had a pick. It seems to me from talking to Francis last week before that visit took place that his parents would really love it if the both of them were playing football together and living in Miami together for a couple of years. What are you hearing on that front as far as the older brother Francisco Mauigoa?
Yeah, I think that one is I don't want to call it a done deal, but I think it's pretty much a lock to get him down here. Um, Obviously he sees what Miami's linebacker room is. He knows he could come in and probably play right away. He's a kid the staff wants a lot, and having him and Francis down here together is a big sell both to him and to his family. So I'm not sure as far as a timeline on the announcement there, but I think whenever that time comes, Miami's going to be the choice. And I think he's a kid that can definitely help out that linebacker room right away.
By the way, Francis shared with me that when him and his brother moved here from American Samoa, when he was in the ninth grade, which was a little more than 3 years ago, Francis didn't speak a lick of English. His brother Francisco did, and so he was really his translator
Mhm.
for the better part of his freshman year when they were both living out in California and playing for St. Thomas Aquinas High out there in California. They ended up going back. Francis did ended up going back to American Samoa, that fall. And his brother ended up obviously signing with Washington State. But it was one of those things where he really feels comfortable with his brother, and I think having sort of reuniting in college might have been part of the big plan here all along. to have that opportunity to be together, and that's important for your most important recruit, I would say. I would consider Francis the most important recruit in Miami's class. To have him feel comfortable, to have familiar surroundings, you don't want him to get homesick and leave.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't know how long this has been a discussion for. If it was something that's been going on back to when he was being recruited initially. But yeah, it's definitely something that meant a lot to him, and getting them together down here in Miami. Both, like I said, to Francis, Francisco, and their family. They're all very excited for that to happen and for them to all get back together down here in South Florida.
Yeah. Some defensive linemen. Miami's hosting a couple of them this week at Tunmais at the Yele. I think is actually here now, if I'm not mistaken. The former Texas A&M starter. He started the first two games of the season, had a knee injury, got sidelined. We mentioned him, I think, in the previous podcast as a potential target here for Miami. Somebody they could pick up. He's 6'4", 295, big bodied. He'd certainly help out on the defensive line. And then Kyan Bars from Arizona, another former starter, supposed to be visiting Miami this week after he makes stops at USC and LSU. Any insight into what's happening on the defensive line with those guys? Is there any other names that we should know about?
Those seem to be the two main targets right now in the portal when it comes to defensive linemen. Um, as for recruiting as well from high school, it does seem like they're in a very good spot to flip Etta, who's currently the top ranked player committed at Michigan's class after Miami took Collins, who was the previous top ranked player in Michigan's class.
More Michigan
The
guys.
Exactly. So the Collins and Etta are both very close. Etta's a kid that's a top 120 player in the country, another big time 6'4", 6'5", 275 pound defensive lineman. I've heard he's trying to get down here on a visit this week as well, this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But he's definitely someone I think they're in a very good spot to flip from Michigan. As for the two guys in the portal, Adele from A&M, he just got down here today. I think originally he was going to try to get down here yesterday. For whatever reason, it got pushed back. He's ended up getting down here today. So I think we'll see how both of those visits go. But these guys in the portal, it's such a rushed recruitment. It's basically, these kids in high school, it's 1, 2, 3 years for some of them. High schools, maybe even longer if college is being on them. With this portal recruitment, it's basically 2, 3 weeks of, all right, take all your visits, make your decision. So I think those visits definitely play a bigger part. So we'll see where those kids stand after they get on campus over these next couple of days.
Andrew, any other names that I haven't brought up here? I mean, I've tried to hit all the ones that I know are kind of the main players for Miami here down the stretch. Any other names that are creeping up that might be surprises that I haven't mentioned yet, or you haven't mentioned yet?
Mhm. I think the biggest ones right now are getting Etta from Michigan. Um, think they're still working on J.C. Jackson from Florida. And I think Shadarian Harrison's another name to put out there. He's the cornerback. He's Cormani's teammate at Lakeland. He's currently committed to Pitt. He's coming down here for the state championship game this weekend and is going to take an official visit to Miami while he's down here for that. I think that's a kid that if they push for, they'll be able to flip from Pitt. He's another long, lanky cornerback with speed. He's actually a former quarterback at his previous school, so he's fairly new to playing the position, and he's had a really good year for Lakeland. Miami recently just extended that official offer to him, and I think there's a very good chance that if they push for him this weekend, they'll be able to flip him from Pitt and get him on board as well.
Yeah, I asked about him. I actually spoke with the position coach up at Lakeland, and he said, "Look, he said that's a kid that's he's been pretty strongly committed to Pitt throughout the process. So if Miami's able to flip him, it might be one of those. It kind of reminds me of a Sheldrick Redwine, right? When he was teammates with Johnson, and they were able to sort of flip him at the last minute from Louisville and add him to the class. So that would be kind of a similar deal. I think in the end, Miami wants obviously another veteran cornerback. They've lost a few of those guys. Kamari Rogers, the latest DB to exit. Um, a lot of departures at that position, Andrew.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you about that a little bit and what you're hearing. A lot of fans are saying, why are all these guys leaving? I think part of it is, the coaching staff here has certain, requirements, guys that they think meet the standard.
yeah. I mean, when we spoke last week, I think we were at around 14, and we're saying, wouldn't be surprised if we get up close to 20. I think now a week later we sit at in
17.
that 17, 18 range.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, with John Campbell leaving today as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, we'll continue to see that another two or three in the portal. And I think that was always the plan from the start, even, before the portal opened, is there was a large part of this roster that this coaching staff wasn't the biggest fans of and just didn't mesh well with some of these players. And, just completely different personalities going from Manny Diaz to Mario Cristobal and his staff. And I think it definitely takes here to kind of flush all that out, make room and bring in guys that they want that fit what they want to do here at Miami. So we'll say I wouldn't be surprised if there's another two or three guys that end up leaving. And just continue to make more spots for them in the portal. I don't think they'll fill all those spots this opening, but definitely at spring ball, after spring ball, there's another portal opening. And I think there they'll continue to go hard and bring in some top guys.
Yeah, as far as the cornerback position is concerned, if you get Cormani, I think you could pretty much pencil him in now, especially now that Tyreek Stevenson has finally sort of announced he's leaving and going to the pros. You lose DJ Ivy. Really, to Corey Couch is the one experienced cornerback you've got coming back at that position. So I think the door is open for a guy like Cormani to come in and play right away. I know obviously they also like the kid out of Melbourne, Robert Stafford. He's a playmaking type guy. I don't know if he can come in and start right away, but I think Cormani probably could, and you could probably get Robert to play quite a bit, and then whatever else you can find through the transfer portal, as far as adding other guys here in the mix. And I think the other position people are still a little worried about is running back. I know they picked up the kid from Dillard, Christopher Johnson, who's a speedster, 5'11", 178 pounds, but really track speed, two-time state champion, 100, 200-meter dashes. Johnson's speed is electric, but we know that you can get down running backs pretty quickly. What are you hearing on the running back front?
Yeah, I mean they're very happy with the three that they have. Obviously, they want to go into the portal and get another one or two. As you said, we saw this past year how quickly running back depth can take a hit. So I think with Trevante Citizen, Cheney, and Parrish coming back, they're very happy with that trio leading the way. Bringing in Chris Johnson and hopefully Mark Fletcher will help shore up that room. But I think they're definitely still looking at some in the portal. A lot of the guys that they were hoping would jump in the portal didn't. I know they were hoping Judkins at Ole Miss because of relationships with Kevin Smith. That ended up not happening. CJ Donaldson at West Virginia, they were hoping he would maybe jump in the portal, want to come back home. And then this running back from Notre Dame as well that they were hoping for. But it seems like all three of those have stayed put at their school. So they're still looking at some options right now. Again, that might be a position where they wait till spring to bring in another guy or two and load up in that second portal opening.
Last thing I wanted to touch on, John Campbell entering the portal. He was their starting left tackle for basically the whole season after Zion Nelson went down. Some people may look at that and panic and say, oh, you shouldn't lose a starter. But in the end, is this more of a signal of, look, Maui Goa and Okunlola and some really good players are coming in here, and John reading the writing on the wall, so to speak?
Yeah, definitely could be. I was a little bit surprised to see him at the portal just because the lack of depth at position right now, and obviously he played a lot. But I think if they land Sampson as well, he may have seen the writing on the wall that between Zion, Francis, and Sampson, that may have bumped him down to maybe the fourth offensive tackle on the team, and decided to head out. So hopefully they do land Sampson, and then I don't think offensive tackle will be too big of a worry for the next few years between Francis and Sampson on the edges.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I appreciate you hooking up with me to do this and talking a little football, recruiting and transfer portal before signing day. We're a week away from it. Miami's got the sixth ranked class in the 247 Sports Composite. I know they shuffled some of the rankings around, so they went from 5 and then somehow fell back mysteriously to 6. Miami fans are just gonna have to swallow that for now. If they get Samson Okunlola, they'll be back in the top 5. Uh, any other thoughts here as we wrap this up?
No, I mean, first and foremost, just getting Samson's gonna be the biggest thing. If they land him, that'll bump them up to I think three, behind just Alabama and Georgia, which was, I mean, coming off a 5-7 season is incredible. And then I think the biggest thing just down the stretch this last week is follow the visits. If Shadarian and Mark Fletcher and them end up taking those official visits to Miami this weekend, I think that puts them in a good position with them. Same thing with the offensive line transfer from Alabama coming in, Cohen. I think having that last weekend of official visits before signing day is one of the best things you can have before these kids make a decision. So I think just seeing who ends up showing up on campus this weekend will be a good sign, hopefully, of what's to come on signing day.
All right, Andrew, thanks again. Make sure to follow him on Twitter. Share your Twitter account again for our listeners.
It's just my first name underscore my last name. So Andrew underscore Ferrelli, Ferrelli.
All right, you can follow Andrew there, as well as all the work he'll be doing with the Raw 7-on-7 team when you guys get started. You said January, right? Is when you guys get going?
Yes, so we'll have our big showcase January 6th, and then the season starts with some tournaments a couple weeks later. The first one's in Miami, and then we'll be all over Miami, Orlando, Chicago, Vegas, Texas, Phoenix, Tennessee. So we'll be all over the country, taking some of the best players in the country with us.
All right. I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, I can jump along on some of those trips and watch the talent put together this offseason. We'll see if I'm allowed to do any of that stuff. All right, Andrew. Thanks for coming on, man. We'll have another Wide Right podcast here probably right before signing day on Wednesday. If not, we'll have plenty of signing day coverage for you. If you want to listen to my interviews with Ruben Bain and Nathaniel Ray Joseph, you're going to have to download it on the podcast. But for the YouTube episode, we're wrapping it up right here. Talk to you guys later. See you soon.